Okay, good morning, everyone. Let me introduce myself. My name is Bassem Sharafuddin from the International Finance Corporation, and I will be the moderator for today's event. Let me first welcome you all, and thank you very much for joining us in this important conference. Access to finance is a very important topic, particularly for the IFC and for our partners, the AMF. Today's event will give us some background on how important this is, particularly through effective financial infrastructure systems in the MENA region. Let me first thank the Central Bank of Bahrain, the MENA Center for Investment, for hosting this event in Bahrain. Thankfully, they have done that. And of course, the Arab Monetary Fund, IFC's partner, particularly on access to finance issues in the MENA region. Without further ado, let me introduce the speakers of our opening remarks. Our first speaker is Mr. Khalid Hamad, Executive Director of the Banking Supervision in the Central Bank of Bahrain. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Hamad.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Please first allow me to thank the Arab Monetary Fund, the International Finance Corporation, and the MENA Center for Investment for organizing this conference in the Kingdom. The CBB is highly aware of the needs of small to medium-sized companies for dependable and affordable finance to facilitate economic growth in the private sector. And therefore, the CBB is delighted to be associated with this event. In fact, this event provides an opportunity to update the business community on the initiatives by the CBB, or the Central Bank of Bahrain, to improve the availability and access to finance for small to medium-sized businesses or companies. As some of you are probably aware, the CBB has already licensed 2 providers of microfinance in the past 3 years. These are Ibda' Bank and Family Bank. These 2 institutions are specifically aimed at the provision of finance of up to BD 3,000 to single-person companies or small businesses. These banks are providing working capital and asset-based finance to allow SMEs to expand. The CBB has supported Tamkeen initiatives through the relaxation of the risk weighting of lending by banks to SMEs from 100% risk weights to 75% risk weights in 2008. Also, the CBB, in realizing the paramount importance of microfinance, has started the development of a specific regulatory framework for such business, and it is expected to be issued next year after the necessary consultation. Of course, I cannot afford not to mention the role played by Bahrain Development Bank in developing the SMEs businesses, as the bank was the first to focus on this sector. The CBB has also worked with the Benefit Company to widen the scope of the Bahrain Credit Reference Bureau to include SMEs and large companies. Lenders will therefore have access to credit information on not just consumers, but also on companies. This initiative should widen the availability of credit to smaller businesses and should also help improve the credit quality of banks' credit portfolios. The CBB is also looking at setting a lower fee for inquiries to the Credit Reference Bureau in respect of SMEs in order to keep down borrowing costs for such businesses. But overall, we have already advised banks not to increase charges on companies as a result of this initiative. Finally, the CBB is intending to include the single-person companies under the umbrella of the CBB's conduct of business requirements applicable to consumer finance so that they can enjoy greater protection. I would emphasize that the CBB does not have any direct supervisory responsibility for small businesses. Nonetheless, the CBB recognizes the importance of SMEs to the economy, and therefore we have sought to provide what measures we can to ensure that their financing needs are met efficiently. Our CBB officials will be present throughout the day at this conference to hear ideas and lessons from the experts speaking here today. And may I therefore wish you all a stimulating and thought-provoking conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamad. Our next opening remark will be done by Dr. Zakaria Hajras, Chairman of the Board of the MENA Center for Investment. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Hajras.
السلام عليكم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الأخوات والأخوة المشاركين في هذه الدورة، اسمحوا لي I will speak in Arabic إذا سمحتوا لي. قبل ما أدخل في موضوع المؤتمركم هذه، أريد أكد على مجموعة من الحقائق تواجه من المنطقة العربية أو منطقة الشرق الأوسط وشمال أفريقيا. أهم هذه الحقائق سواء كانت في الوقت الحالي أو حتى المستقبل المنظور القريب اللي يذهب إلى 5 سنوات القادمة. عندنا في المنطقة يعني معدلات نمو اقتصادية متواضعة جدا، ويتوقع أن تكون أسوأ لم تتخذ الدول إجراءات شديدة. عندنا أعلى نسبة من معدلات البطالة في الأقاليم الموجودة. معدل البطالة العالمي 6.3، احنا عندنا 10.6، 10%. أعلى مستوى البطالة عندنا في الفئات العمرية بين 16 و30 سنة، تشكل 40% نسبة البطالة. عندنا أعلى معدلات النمو السكاني، عندنا أعلى معدل للخصوبة للمرأة العربية، عندنا أعلى معدل للاستيراد في المنطقة بالنسبة على الأقاليم. عندنا وايد أشياء بس صراحة ما بغيت أذكرها كلها وبمللكم فيها. هاي كلها يستدعي أن النظر إلى التحديات اللي تواجهنا في المنطقة، ويستدعي أن احنا نخرج، وخاصة أنتم المتخصصين في موضوع، نخرج خارج إطار المربع اللي حصرنا نفسنا فيه خلال العقود التنمية الماضية، ونفكر بأساليب ابتكارية وإبداعية جديدة لتجاوز والتعامل مع المشاكل الكبيرة اللي تواجه المنطقة خلال الفترة القادمة. واحد الأساليب أو الوسائل اللي ممكن أن نتبعها في مواجهة هذه المشاكل وهذه التحديات اللي ذكرتها هي النظر إلى التمويل وتوفير خطوط ائتمانية وإعادة النظر في البنية التحتية لقطاع الخدمات المالية لتوفير التمويل للاستثمارات. ولكن هذه النظرة وهذا مؤتمركم يتطلب أن احنا نفكر بطريقة غير تقليدية، يتطلب أن احنا نكون أكثر رقي للتحدي اللي مواجهه، يتطلب أن احنا يكون عندنا الشجاعة في اتخاذ قرارات قد تكون قرارات يعني شديدة على القطاعات المالية وعلى الشركات. ليش أنا أثير هذه النقطة؟ لماذا أثيرها؟ لأن فعلا المستقبل لم يعني يعد له من قبل أشخاص مثلكم موجودين هنا، من قبل المتخصصين مثلكم. ما راح نحقق طموحات شعوب المنطقة في الرقي وتوفير مستوى لائق من المستوى المعيشي. الفترة القادمة باعتقادي بتكون خارج إطار الدي تو دي أو الإجراءات اليومية اللي تعودنا عليها في خلال السنوات اللي راحت. بيكون فيه عامل المخاطرة وايد كبير، بيكون دور القطاع الخاص والقطاع العام والمؤسسات التنفيذية والإشرافية والرقابية أن تتكامل. ما يكون في من يحقق النجاح. اللي يحقق النجاح ليس كما يدعي البعض إن مؤسسة ولا شركة ولا شخص ولا فرد. اللي يحقق النجاح مجتمع، اللي يحقق النجاح دولة كاملة، فريق عمل واحد متكامل، على أساس نحقق النجاح ونتجاوز المشكلة. بالتالي يجب البعد عن النظرة الإحادية اللي كانت سائدة في العديد من المؤسسات، سواء كانت مالية ولا اقتصادية ولا صناعية، والنظر إلى النظرة الشمولية اللي كيف أنا كمؤسسة أساهم في رقي هذا المجتمع، في تطور هذا الاقتصاد، في رخاء هذا المواطن. هذه النظرة اللي يجب أن تسود خلال المرحلة القادمة والتعامل معها. أنا يعني ما أريد أقول إيش قد مؤتمركم مهم بهذا الموضوع، لأن أنتم أصحاب التخصص والمعرفة، ولكن عندي كلمة واحدة، إنه والله في أمامكم الآن فرصة تاريخية لأن تعيدوا رسم قطاع الخدمات المالية والبنية التحتية اللي فيه، لأن تكونوا أكثر إبداعية في كيفية إيجاد روابط بين مكونات هذا القطاع وبقية القطاعات الاقتصادية الأخرى. فهذه فرصتكم التاريخية اللي أتاحتها الظروف العالمية والمتغيرات والمستجدات الدولية، تستدعي منكم أن تكونون أكثر جسورين للتقدم إلى الأمام في المرحلة القادمة. لذلك أنا يعني أبدي شكري وتقديري الشديدين لصندوق النقد العربي ومؤسسة تمويل الاستثمار التابعة للبنك الدولي على إتاحة هذه الفرصة لنا جميعا، يعني أن احنا نناقش ونتحاور وكيف نرسم مستقبلنا في المرحلة القادمة فيما يتعلق بتوفير التمويل الائتماني. واشكر البنك واشكر المصرف المركزي في البحرين على قبوله ورعايته لهذه. وما يفوتني في النهاية أشكر صراحة أختين عزيزات بذلوا جهد كبير، الأخت وحيد الدوي والأخت هناكانو في الإعداد لهذا المؤتمر. اسمحوا لي إذا طولت عليكم، شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Our next opening speech will be done by Dr. Mustafa Karra, Director of Economic and Technical Department in the Arab Monetary Fund. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Mustafa.
بسم الله. السلام عليكم. حضرات السيدات والسادة الحضار، يسعدني أن أرحب بكم في بداية هذا المؤتمر الإقليمي حول تحسين الوصول إلى التمويل من خلال تقوية البنية التحتية للقطاع المالي والمصرفي في الدول العربية، الذي ينظمه صندوق النقد العربي ومؤسسة التمويل الدولية بالتعاون مع مصرف البحرين المركزي ومركز الشرق الأوسط للاستثمار في البحرين. ويأتي تنظيم هذا المؤتمر في إطار المبادرة الجديدة التي أطلقها مؤخراً كل من صندوق النقد العربي ومؤسسة التمويل الدولية لتطوير نظم وعمليات الإقراض المضمون في الدول العربية. وأود في هذه المناسبة أن أتوجه بالشكر للزملاء في مؤسسة التمويل الدولية ليس فقط على مشاركتهم معنا في تنظيم هذا المؤتمر، بل أيضاً لجهودهم وتعاونهم المتواصل على صعيد العديد من الأنشطة والمبادرات المشتركة التي تهدف إلى تطوير القطاع المالي والمصرفي في الدول العربية وتعزيز سلامته وكفاءته. والشكر موصول أيضاً إلى مصرف البحرين المركزي ومركز الشرق الأوسط للاستثمار في البحرين على جهودهم ومساهماتهم الكبيرة في ترتيب عقد هذا المؤتمر وتوفير كل السبل والإمكانيات لنجاحه. ونحن نأمل أن يساعد هذا المؤتمر في زيادة الوعي بأهمية قضايا البنية التحتية للقطاع المالي والمصرفي واحتياجات تطويرها في الدول العربية. حضرات السادات والسادة، لا يخفى عليكم أن المنطقة العربية تعتبر من أكثر مناطق العالم فيما يتعلق بضعف مؤشرات الوصول إلى التمويل. فعلى سبيل المثال، وفقاً لدراسات حديثة، فإن نسبة الشركات الصغيرة والمتوسطة التي لا تتمكن من الحصول على التمويل قد تصل إلى 80% من إجمالي عدد الشركات المسجلة في الدول العربية. كما أن نسبة عدد الحسابات المصرفية إلى عدد السكان تبقى كذلك متدنية في المنطقة بالمقارنة مع أغلب المناطق الأخرى، وإن تفاوتت هذه النسبة بشكل كبير بين الدول العربية. حضرات السيدات والسادة، هناك مجموعة من المحاور التي يتعين الاهتمام بها لمعالجة تدني مؤشرات الوصول إلى التمويل في المنطقة العربية. ولعل أهم هذه المحاور يتمثل في الحاجة إلى متابعة تقوية جوانب البنية التحتية للقطاع المالي والمصرفي. هذا ولا يمكن أن نغفل في هذا الصدد أن هناك تحسناً نسبياً قد تحقق في بعض جوانب البنية التحتية، وتحديداً على صعيد نظم الدفع والتسويات، وبسرعة أقل فيما يتعلق بنظم المعلومات الائتمانية. إلى أن هذا التقدم يبدو أقل بكثير فيما يتعلق بنظم الرهن والإقراض المضمون وحقوق الدائنين. ذلك وللأسف أن معظم الدول العربية في مراتب متأخرة فيما يتعلق بهذه الجوانب. فعلى سبيل المثال، وفقاً لمؤشرات تقرير مناخ الأعمال الصادر عن البنك الدولي لعام 2011، فإن أفضل دولة عربية من حيث الترتيب على صعيد حقوق الدائنين تأتي في المرتبة 106 عالمياً، ومتوسط ترتيب الدول العربية هو 134، وذلك من أصل 183 دولة عالمية. ولا شك أن هذا الجانب يحتاج للاهتمام من حيث تطوير التشريعات اللازمة والإجراءات والممارسات القائمة. كما تعلمون، فإن تطوير التشريعات والإجراءات المرتبطة بنشاط وعمليات الإقراض المضمون ستسمح بتوسيع نطاق الأصول المنقولة التي يمكن استخدامها كرهن للحصول على التمويل، خاصة بالنسبة للشركات الصغيرة والمتوسطة. وقد بيّنت الدراسات العديدة أن تبني نظم كفء وفعال للإقراض المضمون قد أدت إلى تحقيق زيادة ملحوظة في الإقراض للقطاع الخاص وتحديدا للمؤسسات والشركات الصغيرة والمتوسطة، كما أدت أيضا إلى خفض كلفة الإقراض على هذه المؤسسات وزيادة فترات الاستحقاق المتاحة للائتمان المقدم لها، ناهيك عن الأهمية التي تكتسبها مثل هذه الأنظمة في تقليل مخاطر الائتمان والحد من التركز في هذا الائتمان. حضرات السيدات والسادة، يمثل مؤتمرنا اليوم مناسبة طيبة للتعرف على أهمية أنظمة الإقراض المضمون وتحسين فرص الوصول إلى التمويل، وما هي المتطلبات اللازمة لنجاح هذه الأنظمة سواء فيما يتعلق بالجوانب القانونية أو الفنية، وذلك مع واقع التجارب والدروس المستفادة في هذا الصدد. ونحن سعداء لتواجد مجموعة من أفضل الخبرات العالمية لتشاركنا اليوم تجاربها وتوفر لنا المشورة في كيفية تطوير مثل هذا النظم في دولنا. حضرات السادة والسيدات، يحرص صندوق النقد العربي في هذا الصدد على تطوير برامجه وسياساته بما ينسجم مع احتياجات دعم جهود التنمية الاقتصادية في الدول العربية، وبوجه خاص على صعيد القطاع المالي والمصرفي. فقد عمل الصندوق على تطوير تسهيلاته الإقراضية لدعم الإصلاحات في هذا القطاع. كذلك أقدم الصندوق على إطلاق مجموعة من الأنشطة ومبادرات للمعونة الفنية هدفت إلى تعزيز متطلبات الاستقرار المالي وتطوير البنية التحتية للقطاع المالي والمصرفي إلى جانب تحسين فرص الوصول إلى التمويل. وكان أخذ هذه المبادرة كما أشرت في بداية كلمتي مبادرة مشتركة مع مؤسسة التمويل الدولية لتطوير نظم الإقراض المضمون في الدول العربية، والتي نأمل أن تساهم في المساعدة على تحسين ممارسات إدارة المخاطر لدى المؤسسات المصرفية والحد من التركز في التسهيلات الائتمانية، كما نأمل أن تساهم كذلك في تحسين فرص الوصول إلى التمويل للمؤسسات الصغيرة والمتوسطة. هذه المؤسسات التي تمثل المحرك الأساسي لخلق فرص العمل المنتج في اقتصادات الدول العربية. وتقوم هذه المبادرة بصورة رئيسية على إجراء تقييم شامل ضمن منهجية موحدة لأوضاع نظم وعمليات وممارسات الإقراض المضمون في الدول العربية، وتقديم التوصيات وخطط العمل المناسبة للسلطات في هذا الشأن. كما تشمل المبادرة توفير المساعدة على تطوير الإطار القانوني والتشريعي إلى جانب المساعدة على تقديم الحلول الفنية فيما يخص الأنظمة والبرمجيات. بالإضافة إلى ذلك يمثل توفير التدريب والتأهيل اللازمين وزيادة التوعية ركن مهم من أركان هذه المبادرة. حضرات السيدات والسادة، أود أن أشير قبل أن أختم كلمتي أن باستطاعة أي جهة أن تضع أفضل القوانين والتشريعات وتقتني أحدث البرمجيات والأنظمة، وإنما قد لا يكون هذا كافياً للوصول إلى الهدف المنشود إن لم تتوفر الكوادر المؤهلة والوعي من قبل كل المعنيين ومشاركة وتعاون الأطراف المعنية. أخيراً، أتمنى أن يساهم مؤتمر اليوم في تعزيز وعينا للعديد من الجوانب والقضايا المتعلقة بنظم الإقراض المضمون في الدول العربية. كما أشكر مجدداً مؤسسة التمويل الدولية، مصرف البحرين المركزي، ومركز الشرق الأوسط للاستثمار. كما أشكر لكم بحضوركم متمنياً كل النجاح لهذا المؤتمر، والسلام عليكم.
Thank you, Mr. Carra. Our next opening speech will be done by Mr. Alejandro Alvarez, who's the Secure Transactions Global Specialist for the International Finance Corporation. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Alvarez.
Thank you very much, Basim. Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here representing IFC and working with such a distinguished audience. I'd like to first thank the Arab Monetary Fund, the Central Bank of Bahrain, and the MENA Center for Investment for supporting this initiative and for inviting us to be here today with you. We're living in tumultuous times right now. Perhaps the most tumultuous times that we have seen in the last few decades. If we think about the situation in many regions in the world, including the MENA region, and the stress that we are seeing in many of the areas affecting society, the economic distress, the financial distress, the social distress, it leads us to think what the priorities are for countries and what the priorities are to make countries have policies that will lead to economic growth. And so these priorities, obviously, a number of them have been mentioned here by my distinguished panelists, and these are job creation, it's economic growth. Those are some of the priorities that we're facing, and so one would wonder if these are the priorities. What are we discussing? Why are we discussing financial infrastructure? Is that one of the priorities? And so my view is that financial infrastructure is not one of the priorities, but is actually a tool that will lead you to achieve some of those priorities, like economic growth and job creation. Governments at these times need to think of what are the most efficient ways and what are the most efficient tools that will lead countries to have efficient systems to create jobs, to provide access to finance to firms. And I think financial infrastructure is one of those tools that will lead you to have such an achievement. We have a lot of evidence and more evidence throughout the world that the major creator of jobs and employment these days are the small and medium enterprises. It is not the big corporates that are creating the employment, but it's the small and medium enterprise segment. Financial infrastructure is catering to serving more the small and medium enterprise sector throughout the world through improving better collateral registry systems, better payment systems that will be the bare bone of the financial architecture in the country. We have evidence of countries that have gone through reforms in these areas and have had a tremendous impact into the growth of SMEs, into the creation of employment. I'm sure my colleague Oscar and Murad will talk more about those, but I just wanted to bring you some statistics from China and what some of the impact of this type of work in China has been. There was a reform of the secure transaction system and also the creation of a credit bureau. And more than 3.5 trillion of financing has been facilitated through this reform. And 80% of that financing has been to SMEs, small and medium enterprises. These SMEs, 88% of those SMEs have mentioned that they have been able to grow their business, to create more employment through their financing that they have received through this reform. When we have asked the financial institutions also in China what have been the effects for them in the introduction of these reforms, 80% of them have mentioned that they have been able to reach more SMEs, more underserved clients that they didn't have before. And so I think these numbers and others in other countries show us that by introducing the right reforms, you can actually achieve a lot in the creation of employment through SMEs. And it is not the silver bullet, and it is not going to resolve all the problems that your region is facing, but I think it will certainly help in creating a more robust small and medium enterprise sector, which can employ a number of the people who are now without future. And so, so I'm here to commit on behalf of IFC for supporting the region, for supporting the different governments through our partnership with the Arab Monetary Fund and other institutions in the region to assist governments into conducting this reform through our experience in other regions. But I also think that there has to be a strong commitment from the governments in trying to move forward some of these reforms. These reforms cannot be achieved unless there is serious commitment from governments to introduce changes into the existing financial infrastructure in the countries. So I would leave it up to that. I hope you all have a very productive session today. And I would like to thank again the organizers for having us here and for giving us the opportunity to discuss these important matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Alejandro. By Alejandro's opening remark, now all our welcome remarks has been completed. I'd like to thank our panel, Mr. Hamad, Mr. Hajras, Mr. Kharra, and Alejandro for their words, which shows us that today hopefully will be a very fruitful day in terms of knowing more about financial infrastructure and how it can play a very important role in facilitating and increasing access to finance for SMEs in the MENA region. So thank you once again. Now we will start our first session, which is about credit reporting infrastructure and its importance as a tool to support access to finance for SMEs. This session will be talking about the Arab Credit Reporting Initiative, which is the partnership that AMF and IFC has. It has been there since 2008, and actually it was renewed almost a month ago for another 3 years after the very good results that were achieved. And this will be laid down in the presentation. It will also talk about the international status of credit reporting, so what is happening exactly globally in credit reporting and how it was a tool to increase access to finance. And then there will be a particular focus on the developments in MENA in the past several years in the area of credit reporting. This session will be delivered by Mr. Hafid Obrik from the Arab Monetary Fund and Oscar Madedu from the International Finance Corporation. And we will be starting with Mr. Hafid. Just a quick introduction of Mr. Obrik. Hafid is... there's a coffee break now? Okay, so we can have a 20-minute coffee break, and then we can start with the first session, and I'll hopefully introduce our next speakers afterwards. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so I guess we can start. So now we start with our first session. I'll introduce it a bit again, which is about creating a credit reporting infrastructure and how important it is as a tool for facilitating access to finance, particularly in the MENA region for small and medium enterprises. The session will cover the topic of the Arab Credit Reporting Initiative, which is an initiative between the Arab Monetary Fund and the International Finance Corporation that has been there for the past 3 years and was just renewed for another 3 years. And Mr. Hafid Obrik will be talking about this. Second, it will be also covering the international status of credit reporting, what is happening around the world in terms of credit reporting, what are the best practices, and what kind of benefits the countries came out with from such systems, and with a particular focus on what has been happening in the MENA region in the past several years. This session will be covered by Mr. Hafid Ubrik from the Arab Monetary Fund and Mr. Oscar Madedo from the International Finance Corporation. Quick introduction to Mr. Ubrik. He's a financial systems specialist in the Arab Monetary Fund. He's in charge of the payment systems and credit reporting initiatives in the Arab Monetary Fund for the MENA region. Under these initiatives, Mr. Ubrik, with the cooperation of the World Bank, IFC, and the IMF, provides technical assistance to Arab central banks on improving their national payment systems and credit information sharing infrastructures. Prior to joining the Arab Monetary Fund, Mr. Ubrik was leading the payment systems and the credit registry departments of the Central Bank of Morocco. Quick introduction to Mr. Madedo, who is an Italian national. And he is the IFC specialist on global specialist on credit reporting. He provides technical assistance on credit reporting in the MENA region and the sub-Saharan African markets to improve retail risk management techniques and establish information sharing infrastructures. He worked also in the Latin American and the Caribbean region from 2004 to 2008. And has supported credit reporting projects in 12 different Latin American countries, and now is working on 12 country projects in the MENA region and sub-Saharan Africa. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Hafid, who will be taking us through the first part of the presentation.
Okay, صباح الخير, سعد الله وصباحكم بكل خير. It's always a pleasure to be with you, and of course want to thank so much the MENA Center for Investment on behalf of the Arab Monetary Fund and IFC, of course with the support of the Central Bank of Bahrain. We are here in Manama to share our views regarding one important topic, which is on financial infrastructure and how we can improve it, let's say, in the Arab region. I think the distinguished speakers this morning, they have highlighted clearly that there is an issue in our region, and there is a strong need for a reform in this area. With the cooperation of IFC, what we have done so far is to work on these two pillars, which are the credit information sharing systems and the secure lending framework. Of course, in addition to that, we have a third initiative on the payment system. But as it was indicated this morning by the representative from the Arab Monetary Fund, Dr. Mustafa Kara, in terms of payment system, we can say that in the Arab world, we have improved, and we started scoring, let's say, better when it comes to having RTGS systems, having an efficient payment channel, let's say, in all our Arab countries. But for these two pillars, we are lagging behind. Let's make it clear that we are lagging behind. Our first Arab country in terms of worldwide ranking for secure lending, let's say, framework is 106th out of 183 country. So this is not good actually for our region, and we are trying, let's say, to improve this situation. I'll be talking, as Basim explained, on the first topic, which is the credit information sharing. And of course, in the second session, or in second and third session, Murad Sultanov, my colleague from IFC, will talk more about the secure lending framework. We want, and this is, with Oscar will commit, let's say, by the end of this day, of today's presentation, we want to demonstrate that if we reform these two pillars, we will succeed to achieve those objectives. For the first one, we'll definitely, if we have an efficient credit information sharing system, you will increase the access to credit for good customers, and Oscar will be explaining good and bad customers. You will better control the solvability or the interdebtedness of customers, reduce the need for collateral, and significantly improve the non-performing loans ratio. These are the main objectives of having an efficient credit information sharing, and we really hope that throughout the day we will demonstrate, let's say, that those by having an efficient financial infrastructure will be able to succeed in achieving all these goals. For the second one, of course, as Murat will be explaining, will have an immediate and positive and far-reaching impact on increasing levels for domestic investment flows. And of course, this will consequently improve access to private credit for SMEs. Countries with better collateral laws and registries will have greater access to credit, better rating for their financial system, and low rates for non-performing loans. So these are the main goals of our two initiatives, and we will, inshallah, during the day, we will explain all of this. What is ACRI? ACRI, Arab Credit Information Initiative. You know already that it's a joint program with IFC. We are not reinventing the wheel. It's something that has already been successful in the Latin America, where they have started what is indicated here, the West Hemisphere Credit Reporting Initiative, and you can see it on the website. But this initiative for the Arab region was launched in 2008 in Cairo under the patronage of the Council of Governors of Arab Central Banks. This is one of our committee at the Arab Monetary Fund, and they are, let's say, it's a gathering of Arab Central Bank governors, and they are thinking, let's say, and sharing their views about the financial system and how to improve it. So they decided in 2008 to start something on this area. And 2008, as you know, this was the beginning of the financial crisis. So I think we have been very lucky to start a joint program before even the financial crisis started. And this is a good, let's say, a good sign. As you know, or as you might know, the financial crisis, one of the reasons of that was that the financial institution, especially in the US, were not using the credit reports, let's say, issued by all the credit bureaus. Since the land has, the value of the land was increasing without any limit, so they were just, forgetting about looking to credit report, and they were just lending, a continuous lending without any homework when it comes to check and verify the credit solvability of their customers. It's a 3-year project, and we have renewed with IFC just a few months ago. What are the objectives? Is to I will just summarize it in 2 points. One is to foster the development and the improvement of informational, technical, legal credit reporting infrastructure in the MENA region, and try to promote the best practices in terms of business and regulatory reforms. Second point, and this is the most important on my views, is to raise financial community and public awareness. We don't know, as a consumers, we don't know our rights when it comes to credit reporting. The financial institution, they don't know exactly how, for some of them, I would say, for some, they don't know exactly how to do, let's say, the global process, or how to make efficient their processing of underwriting, let's say, a credit. And this is something that we want throughout our, let's say, different conferences and meetings to raise awareness about all of these topics. The approach adopted by ACRI is to go to a country. We do, of course, ask for the necessary authorization. We go to the country through the central bank. We assess the situation in the country, and we come up with some recommendation for the authorities. Capital Market Authority, it could be central bank. Mainly it's central bank, but in some countries, for example, Oman, it's the Capital Market Authority, not the central bank. we do our assessment and we provide a recommendation. We raise awareness by organizing local workshop, especially for the financial community in that country. And of course, we facilitate knowledge sharing by having sort of seminars for all the stakeholders who are involved, let's say, in establishing or implementing an efficient credit information sharing in the country. The last point I would say is to try to support full credit reporting project. And we have some examples. I will let Oscar maybe talk about that on the second presentation, about the credit reporting project that we have in the region. Okay, this is the organizational structure for ACRI, but how central banks will profit from ACRI. So it's worth mentioning that whenever we have a meeting, the representative from the central banks will have the ability to share experiences, problems, and solutions. This is the most important, that how did you solve in your country, let's say, this specific topic when it comes to credit reporting. And I think that being part of one region, which is the Arab world region, I think we have a lot of similarities, and that we can make our exchange of information much easier and much simple and more profitable, let's say, for the various countries in the Arab world. Policymakers will benefit also from an exchange of information, experience, ideas on this topic, and to support. The central bank will support to enhance and revamp, establish a best practice national credit reporting system. In different countries, you will see later that we have what we call the PCR, PCB, private bureaus, or public credit registry, whatever. These are databases either operated by the private sector or inside or operated by central banks themselves. And this is, so the idea is to have an efficient credit reporting at the national level, including all the components, maybe private bureau, maybe with a good credit registry, let's say, providing the necessary information for monetary policy for the central banks or for, let's say, the stakeholders who can, let's say, benefit from this information. Timetable, we started the MOU in on April 2008. Conference was in Cairo in the same year. In 2009, 4 missions actually, Lebanon, Syria, Tunisia, and Yemen. 2009, also in November, we have launched our first annual conference. It was in Abu Dhabi, where we have launched our website. 2010, we have done Oman, Palestine, and Libya before the last events in Libya. In 2011, mission to Jordan and the UAE. It was and these are the latest, the latest one. It was on April 2011 this year. One of the main also, let's say, very important event that IFC is organizing with the Central Bank of Malaysia is especially focusing on credit reporting and risk management. And it's an annual event that you also can attend if you want by just, registering with IFC on this regard. We have renewed our MOU that was on October 9 this year. And we have a mission to Iraq expected on December 5-8 by early next month. And we have some selected countries for 2011-2012. We wish to do Qatar, Morocco, Kuwait, and Mauritania. What are the lessons learned? And this is the most important part maybe of the presentation, is to know where we are for the Arab countries. Of course, all our valuable speakers, they highlighted, let's say, the situation. And let's be more specific in terms of indicators. We have in the Doing Business report, I don't know if you two, if you are familiar with those, but the Doing Business is covering a large, let's say, part, let's say, of the business, but one of these is what we call getting credit. There is a getting credit indicator split into 4 sub-indicators. 2 of them are really important for our presentation today, is the depth of credit information sub-index and the strengthening of creditor rights also sub-indicator. So we have been doing, it's an indicator of from 0 to 6. So we have some countries scoring 6, Saudi Arabia, Egypt. Some of them are scoring 5, and some of them are scoring 0, as you can see. Iraq, Sudan, Syria had just moved to 2. Comoros Islands also are scoring 0. So this will just give you an idea about how are we doing in terms of depth of credit information. Second one, as I said, is strengthening the legal rights sub-indicator. So from 2009, 2012, we did not move. Honestly speaking, we did not move. So the best country is Saudi Arabia with scoring 5, but some other are scoring 4, 3. We are not even reaching 9 or 10, and this is an area where a lot of focus has to be done by the authorities. We did not discover, but throughout, let's say, our assessment, we can split, let's say, the situation into 3 different aspects. One is we have a set of countries with an old, what we call credit registry operated by the central banks. So there is a threshold for the loans, for the contribution from the banking sector. Only banks, the database is open only for banks. Not all the data is being contributed, just few data elements are being contributed, no consumers data, and very basic credit report generated. We still have this situation in 2, I would say, 3, 4 countries. Second, let's say, group of countries, they have started something, reforming, let's say, their public credit registry. Of course, they tried to make it as efficient as possible they just removed the threshold. They have all the major stakeholders are participating, but of course still no consumer data, and relatively nice but still limited credit report generated. The third, I would say, third group is those who are, let's say, opted to go for private credit reporting infrastructure in place. No loans threshold completely. All the stakeholders are participating, and Oscar will be explaining, let's say, what type of stakeholders we will see. A part of consumers' data is contributed. Still, they have something to do in terms of consumer data. And their credit reporting or the credit report generated are very useful. We have also noticed that throughout all the Arab countries, that there is a commitment. Maybe it's not a strong commitment, but there is a commitment about the necessity and the importance of reforming and enhancing public credit registry at all levels. Central banks, Ministry of Finance, the banking community itself are willing to, let's say, to promote and to reform this area. But they don't know, maybe for some of them, they don't know when they should, let's say, undertake this reform, and how. Is it to leave it to the public or to ask the private sector to intervene? That's the major question. And of course, by, let's say, discussing with them, we try to convince them that what is the best maybe option to go with when it comes to, let's say, opening that to the private or maybe having control on the data. So these are the various options we have in the Arab countries. Of course, this commitment is to enhance the access to finance in the country and to reduce the non-performing loans. So these are the main objectives of this. If you ask any central bank, they will say, okay, we are willing to reform. But of course, we are looking from a different angle. The angle for us is to enhance the access to finance in the country and, of course, to reduce the non-performing loans. All of them okay. All the stakeholders, they agree also that any private credit bureau or any private credit initiative implemented needs absolutely to be under the supervision of the central bank. You will say that they don't trust the private. No, they of course, they trust the efficiency of these private companies. But of course, they know that there is some consumers protection, consumers data protection, and the central bank has a role to play on it. That's the reason why they insist that any private credit bureau mechanism established in the country has to be under the control and the supervision of the central bank. What are the issues faced or raised by many Arab central banks? Of course, you will see, and Oscar, I think, will just talk about this. The bank secrecy restriction, السرية المصرفية. The microfinance institution, are they a part of the scope? In all the Arab countries, I would say that those institutions are not under the scope of the central bank. So it's not easy to bring them to this shared database and to, let's say, exchange information about credit information. Other external data providers, we'll discover them in the second presentation, cannot contribute because they are not operated and they are not supervised by the central bank. A weak potential in credit registry to develop risk value added services. You can have a good credit registry, but there is no value added. And even inside the in some central banks, there is, it's not easy to implement those value added services because of maybe of the capacity building of the people, let's say, operating those credit registry, or maybe the team itself is not as big as it should be, let's say, to operate something where we have consumers data, a lot of million maybe of data coming in to this database and needs to be operated, controlled, checked, verified every day, and generating, let's say, all the reports, the management reports or the statistical reports needed for those, for this business. The last, maybe one of the issues is that there is some resistance to change towards private info sharing. Some central banks, they would like to have the full control on this data. They don't want to share it with any private information. For some of them, they decided to go inside and to develop, let's say, credit registry inside with trying to implement the best practices in this area. I would just conclude by saying that as the financial infrastructure is extremely important to increase access to finance in our region. The IMF and IFC are committed to continue, of course, the assessment mission in 2011-2013, follow up on the previous ACRI assessment with the objective of transforming at least one of them into a real project, and I think Oscar will explain that, and multiply the meetings and conferences to enhance the exchange of experiences among the Arab central banks. Just my final words would be that this is one of the extremely important topic, financial infrastructure. And of course, we are willing to support the authorities to reform those areas. This is free of charge, Oscar. So it's a free technical assistance for all the countries. And of course, you are welcome if you want to, for the Arab Monetary Fund and IFC, to support you in this regard. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Afid, for being so quick and concise. We have been the Schumacher of speakers. So, ladies and gentlemen, salam alaikum. This is 50% of my Arabic vocabulary. The remaining is shukran, which, of course, I will use at the end of my presentation. As Basim was telling you, I'm Italian, and someone among you might feel awkward that an Italian gentleman comes here and dares to lecture you on how to reduce non-performing loans after we have a national debt of 2 trillion. But let me tell you that recently we have done our homework. We have studied the microeconomic doctrines of the last century, from Keynes, Galbraith, Krugman, and we have found the quickest, easiest, probably best solution to put our financial on track again. And that was it. But going back to our topic today, what I would like to do in the next 40 minutes is to take you through an overview of credit reporting using real data, real examples from this region and outside. And I would like also to benchmark MENA, the situation of credit reporting here today, compared to what is going on in other regions. Before we speak about benefits, advantages, solutions, let's try to understand what triggers the need of credit reporting worldwide. So, if you look at these two maps, you will immediately understand the need. The mother of all problems is access to finance, or better, lack of access to finance. Here, in this map, you see the penetration of credit in the various countries. The lighter the color, the lower the penetration of credit. So in MENA, we have countries where credit penetration number of loans is less than 10% of the population. In this map, the red spots indicate those countries where credit bureaus are established and operating. Okay. Now, if you correlate the two things, you immediately realize that those countries where there are no private credit bureaus are the same countries where access to credit is more difficult. As for MENA, MENA is probably one of the lowest region, and not probably, is one of the lowest region with the lowest penetration. 2 people out of 10 are having a loan today. And these include microfinance and all type of loans. If we speak about bank loans, the percentage is even lower. Bank intermediation, bank intermediation is very low, and if we consider out the GCC countries, it is the lowest worldwide. There are other reasons why credit reporting is important. In MENA, credit means collateral. There are various examples. We have been assessing 13 countries, so we have a fair idea what is the credit industry in this region today. If you don't have collateral generally, if you're an informal entrepreneur, you don't get credit. Some countries like the UAE, who is probably one of the most developed markets, credit markets, unless you give post-dated checks to get a personal loan, a credit card, you don't get it. There is a long list of musts we have to adhere if we are looking for a personal loan, and this is in most countries in MENA. You must demonstrate that you are a salaried person, which cuts out 80% of the population. You must have an existing bank account in a bank. You must have a checking account. You must promise to credit a salary in that account. You must promise that the installment will be paid out of that account. You cannot move the salary or the installment payment from that account until the loan is over. This is not an isolated situation. You find this in most countries. However, collateral is indicated as one of the most serious problems, both from banks and from the borrowers. Borrowers cannot give collateral. It's very difficult for banks to register it, to enforce it, to sell it. Small, medium enterprises, micro enterprises are the backbone of many economies in MENA. All of them indicate that access to finance is one of the major obstacles, hindrances to make business. And if you look at this chart on the right-hand side, you see that the ratio of small loan to total loans goes from 0.5 to 24% maximum. So there must be something we can do to increase these things. On the other hand, it's very difficult to assess the risk of small, medium enterprise. They have no papers, they have no tax file return, they have nothing. 92% of the banks that we have surveyed, and this is a World Bank survey, say that lack of effective information systems, credit bureaus, is one of the major obstacles. The other 98% surveyed item says that SME transparency, which would be solved if a complete, full credit bureau would be present in every country, is the other problem. However, in MENA, out of 19 countries, we have private credit bureaus only in 7. And most regulators, as Afid was mentioning before, still are opting for a public credit registry. Despite all this selectivity, this difficulty in obtaining credit, MENA is the region worldwide which has the highest non-performing loan rates. And this is not limited to the bank sector. You certainly remember, those of you who come from Morocco, for instance, remember that 2 years ago we had serious crisis. Some microfinance institutions reached a level of portfolio at risk of 30%. So this is a situation that can be repeated in MENA, because microfinance institutions and banks are keeping information separate. We will see later how important it is that the two databases are put together. And finally, the cost of credit. Cost of credit in MENA, and not only in MENA, is very high. In this region, we have found a very specific solution, which is capping the rates. But this is not a solution, because this jeopardizes the capacity of good payers, protects bad payers, does not allow competition to flourish, does not allow banks to be motivated to improve the system. And these are all issues that could be resolved with the establishment of full, complete, non-fragmented credit reporting. So there is a fundamental question we have to ask. Is there a standard, effective, cost-effective, practical, immediately available solution that we could use to resolve, or at least to mitigate all those issues I was mentioning before? Well, since the 1960s, credit bureaus are working in more than 100 countries, and there is no reason to believe that in MENA we can do without them, okay? So, the second part of my presentation will take you through the benefits of having a full and complete credit reporting system. Before speaking about benefits, let's understand what is a private credit bureau. Let's use the same parlance. A private credit bureau is a private commercial organization, okay? The difference with other firms is that it is regulated. There is a supervising authority that normally is the central bank. And two, generally there is a law or a regulation of the central banks, because there is privacy of information to be protected, and borrowers need to be protected. Three main activities of a private credit bureau is to collect information from every single sector that under any form gives credit in a country. So it's not only bank, it's not only non-banking financial institutions, it's microfinance, it's mobile telephone company, it's retailer, it's everybody. Information is collected on a monthly basis, is processed, is purged, merged, and is sold back to those who are given the information, the same providers, under the form of a credit report. Now, benefits. Main benefit is an increased access to credit. In this analysis, for instance, we are comparing a sample of customers who are assessed, whose risk is assessed in two ways: with negative information only, and with credit bureau information, so containing all the information. And we see that a ratio of acceptation of potential good customers is very high. If you use only this information to assess the same customer, you're probably rejecting 35% good customers. If you use we have many public credit registries present here today. If you use only that information, in addition, you are maybe rejecting another 11,000 potential customers. The other major benefit is decreasing non-performing loans, okay? So follow me here. This is the percentage of positive information that we can use to assess the risk of a customer, okay? So 0, it's all negative information. Then we can add bank information, microfinance information, retail information. At the end, we have this full, complete database with all the picture of our customers, okay? Now, you can see that non-performing loans dramatically decrease, sometimes by 2/3. Now, I don't want to be too theoretical, so I want to show you some real cases. One is Egypt. iScore is the private credit bureau that was created there in 2008. As you can see, immediately there was an increase of the volumes, outstanding volumes of loans granted. But see, granting loans is very easy. If I give $1 million to every one of you and I tell you, I will give you 10% commission if you get rid of this money today, you will do it. But giving the money to the right people is difficult. It's more difficult. And the confirmation that the credit bureau is working is given by the declining of non-performing loans. In Egypt, volumes were increasing, non-performing loans are decreasing rapidly. In some cases, by 50%. This is Palestine. In Palestine, they had an increase after revamping the public credit registry of the banks and MFI's portfolio by 52%. But at the same time, oh, this is too quick. Non-performing loans in parallel went down 66%. And of course, provision, which are strictly linked to non-performing loans, went down as well. This is Lebanon. My friend Najib, who is the head of the public credit registry of the Central Bank of Lebanon, will speak later on about the results they have achieved. But these are the curves. So everything is going up, apart from non-performing loans, who are going down. And if you look here, in the last few years, when Najib made an excellent job in revamping the credit registry, the curves were very steep high. So it works. It works. It's tested. It's standard. It's used in more than 100 countries. This is Ecuador. Ecuador is a very nice example because they had one of the most terrible financial crises during the 90s. They had no information, no scoring, no private credit bureaus. The day after the crisis, 50% of the banks were wiped out. All the non-banking financial institutions closed. People outside the banks to collect their money, which was not there any longer. So the regulators in Ecuador said, let's set up private credit bureaus. The first credit bureau started in 2003, and these are the results. This is the growth of the bank's portfolio. This is the growth of microfinance portfolio, which in Latin America is very important. And this is the decrease of non-performing loans. So if you have the two things, you can say that the thing is working. Another benefit, reducing multiple lending and over-indebtedness and cross-lending. This is a real case. This is MENA. This is Egypt. iScore was founded in 2008. For 2 years, microfinance institutions decided not to share data with the credit bureau. They thought their customers were very loyal, that they could not get money from anybody else, that banks would never tap their customers. Well, we asked the 3 major microfinance institutions in Egypt, give me a sample of your portfolio, and we will compare it with the bank's portfolio, which is inside the credit bureau, iScore. And this was the result. This was the portfolio of the microfinance institutions we surveyed. And this was the lines of credit that banks were giving at the same time to the same customer of microfinance. And nobody knew. Absolutely, the day after, microfinance institutions started to share data with the credit bureau. We all speak about small, medium enterprises, how to increase, but what solutions do we have today? Microfinance, small, medium enterprises, they're very small, the informal economy, the backbone of MENA, they don't have paper. We don't understand them. We don't know them. If a bank asks them for paper, they prepare something without even knowing what to put. So it's an opaque segment of population. This is how Wells Fargo decided to cope with that problem. They decided to open a department to give credit only to small, medium enterprises, and that was the profile. A customer with a turnover, sales turnover of $300,000, more or less, asking for a loan of $15,000 with less than 5 employees, so very, very small companies, okay? And in a few years, they became the first small, medium enterprise lender in the United States of America. How did they do that? Wells Fargo does not ask any paper. They know they are for it. They don't ask for tax file return. They use the information that it is inside the private credit bureau on the owner of the small and medium enterprise. If they have a good performance, repaying their personal loan, it is clear that they are going to repay also the debt of their small, medium enterprise. Excuse me. 70% of decisions are taken by a system, not even an analyst, a human being. It's based on information from the credit bureau, bureau score, and the scoring of Wells Fargo. It costs $30. Whenever I ask, when we have more time and we can discuss with the audience, which is not the case today, how much would it cost in Yemen or Jordan or Tunisia to do something like that, and how many days it would take? The answer I get is, well, it will take from 10 to 15 days. A credit committee with managers will be involved, and the cost will be around $500 or probably more. But this is what you can obtain if you have all the information technologically treated in a modern way in any country. Cost of credit. We have said that cost of credit is one of the major complaints by borrowers. So, let's suppose that my friend Afid and I, tomorrow, walk into one of the branches in your countries, anyone, and ask for a credit card. There's no credit bureau, and let's suppose we are approved. What rate of interest they will give us? Very different or more or less the same? More or less the same, because they don't know us. But Afid is a good guy. He repays punctually and perfectly his debt. I'm Italian. I have $2 trillion debt. Why should I pay my credit card? So I leave my bad debt, and who's going to pay for that? Afid. And all the other good payers. So if we have information, we are able to understand what risk is individually allocated to each person. If there is a credit report that tells the bank that I've been a bad payer for the last 5 years, well, Oscar, if you want a loan, you have to pay more or you are rejected. Afid, we want to keep your loyalty because you're a good customer, so we'll give you a lower rate of interest. There are many things you can do with information if you have it, if you have all the information together. People who know that their information is inside a credit bureau, and they know that that information can be their key to better credit, a better condition, or their death as a borrower, are taken to behave better, to have much better social responsibility. This is a real example of microfinance industry in Guatemala. They took a sample of customers who are not paying. See, 20% non-performing loans. They trained them. They told them, look, we have information about you. If you don't pay, your future as an entrepreneur is at risk because you will not get credit. And dramatically, the non-performing loans rate went down. So there are many benefits. There are many things we can do. Let's see what is the situation today in Middle East and North Africa. This was 2005. Very few credit bureaus were there, Pakistan and Kuwait. But in embryo, we saw that Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait were starting some development. And this is the situation today. Very much changed. The good part of the story is that there is no region in the world that has done such a big jump like MENA, because in every country, either a public credit registry or a private credit bureau is coming up. Okay. We have been working in 15 out of these 19 countries at different level. In Morocco, Algeria, Pakistan, Egypt. We followed the project since greenfield. We suggested the strategy, we changed the legislation, we helped the government to select the right partner, et cetera, et cetera. Some other countries been an intervention of a lower level, but we know the strategy and the region. There is a way to define the quality of a private credit registry or a public credit bureau. So every year, IFC and the World Bank survey 183 countries, as was mentioned in a feed a while ago. These are the 6 parameters taken into consideration to say what is the quality of the credit reporting. So if both positive and negative information are inside the database, if this information relate to individual and firms, if there is at least 2 years of historical data to create payment history, if not only banks, but all segments who lend money in a country are included, if there is a law that protects borrowers and gives them the right to see their information, well, that is a good credit bureau. So there is a score that goes from 0 to 6. This is the situation today. The first 2 countries are Egypt and Saudi Arabia, who have 2 private credit bureaus. Most of the remaining countries have public credit registries. So you see there are things that can be done. Area of improvements are there. Too quick. So what are, in my opinion, the main issues today? Well, certainly one most important one, in my opinion, is the role of regulators. Should regulators be sellers of petty information on how I repay my refrigerator bought on credit? Or should they have a higher objective, which is to control the industry of credit information and leave space to private credit bureaus who have been doing this for the last 60 years and who can provide services that generally are not in the skills of a central bank? I'm talking about bureau scores, anti-fraud system, portfolio analysis, and so on. Public credit registries and private credit bureaus are both important. They are the 2 legs of a very effective credit reporting system in a country, but they have very different objectives. Public credit registry is for supervision. Private credit bureau is for credit information and risk assessment. Why? Private credit bureaus perform better than public credit registry. So, these are all the financial entities you can find in a country who can share information among them. These are the regulated entities. So both of them will provide data to the public and the private bureau, okay? But there is a score of other non-regulated entities that legally cannot provide data to the central bank public credit registries, which are very, very important to give a complete picture of the risk of a potential borrower. And if this information is not there, and we are using only this part, it means that we are not giving the lenders the right picture of the risk of the applicant. This is the reason why private credit bureaus are more performing than public credit registry. Recently, we have discovered that the presence of utilities providers, so companies who provide information on how we pay our bills on mobile telephones, gas, water, et cetera, are very important to formalize the informal economy. If I am a micro-entrepreneur, which I'm not bankable, but I can provide an history of the last 24 months saying that, yes, I've been paying punctually my water bills and my telephone. That is already credit-like information. Maybe a microfinance institution will start to give me $300 after 6 months that I've paid well, maybe $500, another 6 months, and so on. In many countries we go, we find another issue, legal framework. Afid was mentioning this before. In many countries we went to,